Forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies. Better late than never. This week's edition of the Midnight Black Mass is on the air. It is I, the maniacal minister of the occult, the Reverend Dan Wilson, here with another edition of the show. We've really enjoyed your feedback on the Andrew Alexander interview series. Tonight we're going to wrap that up with the third and final part. What was a very insightful three-part interview looking at wrestling Booker to Booker from two guys who've done it on an independent level, and that's strictly what we're speaking of here. There's certainly people that have done this on a much higher level than we have. They could tell you a whole lot more than we could, but thankfully we've been able to learn from a lot of those guys over time and can regurgitate some of that to you and kind of speak from our own experience as well. My credentials as a booker go back quite a ways, actually, well before I had any right being in that chair or having that responsibility. It was mainly in an assistant or idea capacity. In the NWA Wildside days, off and on, I was an assistant booker there to Bill Behrens, and before I pretty much got out of that side of it. But it was a really huge learning experience for me, getting to sit under a smart guy like Bill and guys like Jeff G. Bailey and Andrew Thomas and Steve Martin, who were there, all kind of part of the brain trust at the time, pitching ideas and bouncing things back and forth. There was some good, some bad, and some ugly, but I got my first taste of it then. And having a direct hand in booking and setting up cards and angles and feuds and things that would play out over a long period of time. I later was given the full-time booking job at NWA Anarchy, which was probably my most high-profile booking job as a solo with Bill Behrens as a consultant. So it was weird for things to come full circle there, where I was the assistant and he was the booker, to kind of vice versa. Of course, Bill was the TV man and he was always there. Everything kind of had to go through him still, but he trusted me and we had a really good time. And that was cut short by some unfortunate personal circumstances that derailed me, unfortunately. And I had to leave that position. Also have been a booker at, probably half a dozen smaller indie shows over time. Sometimes that's fun and sometimes that's just a giant headache, but it's a lot of responsibility, as you'll hear in the interview and have heard if you've been keeping up. If you haven't, go back and check out part 1 and 2, which are available at youtube.com/pottyhumor, or if you're subscribing on the Potty Humor Network on iTunes, just one word, run it all together, Potty Humor, PODDYHUMOR. You can make sure you never miss an episode. You can do that as well on Stitcher and pretty much any audio on demand podcast service. That way you can pull it up right there on your phone. It's right there, easy for you to access. And so, where will the Rev be coming up? Just get my appearances out of the way real quick. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Dragons Rejects. Stop by and say hello. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you'd like to see in terms of guests, in terms of questions, in terms of format. We like to play around. This is sort of just my creative forum to splatter my brain all over humanity. And I do that on a weekly basis. The personal scheduling has made it rough again. Sometimes that happens, usually towards the end of the year. as I handle my muggle life and responsibilities there that unfortunately have delayed some of the podcasts over the last few weeks. But I'm still cranking them out there, and I still intend to. So, it's not that I've become less passionate about it or anything. It's just been a lot going on the outside realm, and this is my creative playground. So sometimes you don't have time for that when other more important responsibilities step in. So that's kind of where I've been. But again, excited to have Andrew on the show, and we'll be back next week with more. But right now, I'm going to plug a few appearances, as I stated. So you can catch me with Empire Wrestling, of course, empirewrestling.net. On Twitter at EmpirePW, on Facebook at Empire Wrestling. Be back with them this Friday, November the 14th, at the Empire Arena, 22 Austin Avenue in Rossville, Georgia, with an event called Friday Night Lights, a rare Friday night card for the Empire crew at the Empire Arena. But that is because the Empire crew will be picking up shop and heading down the road to Rome, Georgia on Saturday, November the 15th for the Superstars of Wrestling Fan Fest. Going to be all kinds of legends there. I'm talking Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jim Cornette, Jim Neidhart, you name it. And all the stars of Empire are going to be there too. In addition to stars of Deep Southern Championship Wrestling. I just believe the AWF's going to have some talent down there. So going to be a showcase there for a lot of the local promotions to show their wares. Kind of a little bit of friendly competition. I think that ought to be fun. And then coming up on November the 29th, it'll be the big one for Empire of the holiday season, Chasing the Grail. That's Thanksgiving weekend. Main event, The Temptation. Sean Temper's going to defend the Empire title against the man who won the Chasing the Grail tournament. He outlasted 15 other men to become the number one contender. And it's been a spot that's been up for grabs and been in dispute for months. So Joey Lynch has now risen up for this opportunity, and he's going to take on the champion, reigning going into his 11th month as champion now, the Temptation, Sean Tempers. That's going to be one hell of a fight. You want to be there at the Empire Arena on 22 Austin Avenue. I'll also be making my return down to Deep Southern Championship Wrestling on December the 12th. That's a Friday night. 8 o'clock bell time. It'll be in Blue Ridge, Georgia. I will be returning to ringside for the first time in months. But who else would I be with? Are you kidding me? Why are you even asking that question? The strong style psycho Tank, my main man, my dude, the guy I've bled, sweat, and cried with for the last decade or more in this business. And I don't take my relationship with that guy lightly. He calls, he needs me in his corner anywhere. I'm there. No questions asked. Because that's how we roll. The Rejects are much more than just a silly wrestling gimmick. It is family. It is blood. I wouldn't have it emblazoned on my arm if that was not the case. But it'll go with me to the grave. Always awesome to be at ringside with Tank. Looking forward to that. December the 12th in Deep Southern Championship Wrestling. Go to their website at dscw.org or follow them on Twitter at dscw101. So how was your Halloween, groovy ghoulies? It is the most wonderful time of year after all, and it certainly was for the Reverend. I was a badass Homer Simpson. Taking out my kid for trick-or-treating. Kind of all comes full circle when you get older. You go through the 20s and all of the insane partying on Halloween. And now, going into your 30s, you go back to the trick-or-treating and the innocent fun of Halloween, which, you can kind of get numb to when you get old and jaded. But that's a great thing about having kids. It kind of reopens you to those experiences again, and you get to have all that fun again, but you get to live vicariously through them in that respect. And you get also, it's a double win because you also get the joy of seeing them enjoy it and really get into it and just carry on those long-standing holiday traditions that so many have seemed to be dying off. There's very little trick-or-treating anymore. It's all trunk-or-treat. We had to go to a damn trunk-or-treat this year, much to my protests, but the Mrs. was insistent. And I didn't disagree because, unfortunately, if we were planning on going actually trick-or-treating door to door, it wouldn't have happened because people are so damn paranoid anymore that the sense of community and these traditions are just falling by the wayside. Instead, the churches sponsor a trunk or treat. So you go up there and it's all a nice and safe environment. And I see the positives of it. I'm not trying to slag that, but it just kills the fun and the mischief and the mystery of Halloween to me. That's all. And that's a minor Rebs rant to lead into the wrestling rant this week, which just very quickly, I heard Tank, actually, speaking of the Strong Style Psycho, as I was plugging that previous appearance, said he was in a locker room at some show, and some young guy, serious as a fucking heart attack, comes out and says, "Old school wrestling is boring. I don't understand why everyone tells me I should like it. It sucks." Ay, 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 ay. Just missing the point a bit there, kid. Yeah, that's one that I could rant about for hours, so I'm going to do my best to keep this brief and intentionally brief. So, because if I get going at all, I'm going to go forever. But that's a fucking moronic thing to say. You really don't have any understanding of the fucking basic fundamental elements of what make up professional wrestling if you think old school wrestling is boring. You don't really have a place here because you don't understand how it works. You don't understand what got us to this point, why there's even a chance for guys like you to get out there and get in the ring. It's not just paying the respects, but it's learning. So much of this a lost art, and we'll talk about this later in the Andrew Alexander interview. In that, WWE, no slight against them, but they can pretty much get away with doing whatever they want. They don't have to worry about a lot of fine-tuned quality control in terms of protecting and exposing guys because that's the environment that they've fostered, and they can get away with it. But what is unfortunate is on the independent level of wrestling where those fundamentals are still very, very fucking important in terms of doing business, in terms of drawing a gate, in terms of putting on a quality product, in terms of educating your fan base, and so on and so forth. They're so important. You can't get away with not doing them or you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and drive your business into the shithole. So, unfortunately, you just have a bunch of carbon copies of the WWE. They don't understand why they're able to get away with it and an indie promotion isn't. So they just go out there and make a mockery of everyone and everything. And that's not good. I just encourage everyone to educate themselves. There's always a veteran around somewhere that will be willing to talk to you. And I'm talking anywhere, like Ricky Morton. My God, Ricky Morton's still doing 1 million shows every week. And I guarantee you, some of you indie guys out there, you're going to be on a show with Ricky Morton. Sit there and ask him questions. Pick his brain. He'll talk to you all damn day because he's fucking awesome. And he's fucking brilliant. As far as just the whole package of wrestling goes, Ricky Morton is a genius. And you really need to listen to him. Tracy Smothers is another guy. He will be glad to talk to you at these shows because those guys love the business and they care about making sure that these traditions, these ways of business, these other things are carried on. And they do a good job of it. But dumb fucks that don't want to listen or think old school wrestling is boring, like I said, you're missing the fucking point. And boy, I hate it for you if you get in a ring with somebody who takes offense to a comment like that. Because there's one thing about the old style. A lot of that is not just fancy stunt shows. There was a lot of mat wrestling and holds and hooking and legitimate ways to defend yourself should a situation go awry. And if you're practicing a choreographed karate stunt show, you're not going to know that. And if those guys really take exception to you, then you could find yourself in the hospital. So, that's never good. That's not a good way to put your wrestling career on track, is it? No, hell no. So, just a word of the wise to you dumb fucks. Listen and pay attention and don't say stupid shit in the locker rooms because, okay, I'll even take it a step further. You may not even have intended. Maybe he didn't legitimately think old school wrestling was boring. Maybe he was saying it to get a rise out of those guys, which is fine. Like one or two guys might know the guy. They might be cool with him. They might know what his sense of humor is all about and think that's funny. But the other guys, you're going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. That's all I'm saying. And considering you're putting your life in the hands of the people that you work with in professional wrestling, there's a reason it's a brotherhood, and you should try to be a part of that, not away from it. That's all for the Revs Rant this week, and all for the intro here. We can take a little commercial break. We'll be back with part 3 of our interview with Andrew Alexander. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Midnight Black Mass.
The Midnight Black Mass is pleased to announce we have become an affiliate of the World Wrestling Network at WWNLive.com, the home of the finest pay-per-view and video on demand in all of professional wrestling, featuring promotions like Dragon Gate USA, Evolve, Combat Zone Wrestling, OVW, Shimmer, Shine, $5 Wrestling, and the vaunted Kayfabe commentaries with their You Shoot, their guest booker, and their timeline series. You have to check it out. Of course, you can always go to their main page at WWNLive.com, but if you will, do us a solid, go to Facebook.com/PottyHumor or follow me on Twitter at Dragons Rejects. We'll be posting our own unique links to these events as affiliates. If you go through our link, they give us a little kickback, and we greatly appreciate it. The Midnight Black Mass and the Potty Humor Network special event coming up on October the 10th at 9 p.m. from Ybor City, Florida. The lovely and vicious ladies of Shine 22 will be locking horns. You can view that live on video on demand on WWNLive.com for $9.99 for streaming and $14.99 for streaming live and later video on demand viewing. That's Shine in the iPay-per-view October the 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. See all of the toughest and most beautiful women in all of professional wrestling do battle.
Whether you're having an autograph session, personal appearance, or live event, we got just the person you need to contact for all of those needs. SBI Bookings is home of some of the best stars in the wrestling industry today. They provide you with the best talent this business has to offer, from Kevin Nash, Larry Zbyszko, Scott Steiner, and many, many more. So who will you contact next time you're planning an event? The men of SBI Bookings. Check them out at sbibookings.com.
Wrestling fans, Anarchy Wrestling television tapings are the second and fourth Saturdays of every month at 4236 Level Grove Road in Cornelia, Georgia. For more information on Anarchy Wrestling and on the shows, to watch the television product, and a whole lot more, go to anarchy-wrestling.net. That's Anarchy Wrestling, the second and fourth Saturdays of every month in Cornelia, Georgia.
Hey, kids, you know you want to be the coolest cat on the block with your official Midnight Black Mass merchandise, available at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Just in time for Halloween, we have brand new Midnight Black Mass t-shirts. We have reject t-shirts, we have beanies, we have hoodies, and more over at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Get your merchandise today and be one of the cool kids.
Where can you find 24/7 pro wrestling, MMA, talk radio, and more? BeyondRingside.com, featuring 24/7 streaming audio, including the Midnight Black Mass, Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, except for pay-per-view weekends, when they run a mini marathon and the Midnight Black Mass goes on as its namesake at midnight. But don't forget the other great shows like Beyond Ringside, Wrestle Rage, To Be Determined, and more. That's BeyondRingside.com.
Hey, kids. Get your official Midnight Black Mass merchandise just in time for Halloween at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Be the coolest ghoul on the block with your brand new Reject or Midnight Black Mass t-shirt. Get them exclusively online. Online exclusive, people. midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com.
Okay, and we're back on the Midnight Black Mass. My guest at this time, joining us for the big part 3 of a multi-part interview series here, talking the business of professional wrestling, Booker to Booker, Mr. Andrew Alexander. It's a pleasure to have you back, pal.
Man, it's a great honor. 3 in a row. That's crazy. Have you ever had a 3-parter?
Bill Baird did a 6-parter, man. So, but I learned during that even the most interesting person you might not want to listen to for 6 parts in a row. So,
wow, Old Man Barron's with 6 parts. I don't know if I can make that. Yeah, I think you've got me beat there. I would love to hear what he talked about for 6 parts. I need to listen to that.
Well, he repeated the same stories a couple times, but for the most part, Bill could talk about anything for a long time. So it was pretty interesting, It was a really good time, but it was 6 parts. It was long.
Hey, before we get started, why don't you give me like a 10-minute warning before we're done here, and maybe we'll talk about some of the positive things that come with booking a show, so everyone doesn't think we're just the 2 most bitter assholes on the planet.
I was planning on, I was going to lead off with that.
Okay, well, we can do that, too.
Just in the respect that, a lot of what we were trying to explain last week, it may have come off negative towards the boys and the wrestlers, would be that just what it's like from a booker's perspective. It wasn't meant to come off negative towards the boys. It's just some of the shit that you have to deal with when you're given that responsibility that people may not understand or may not even think about when they're sitting on their couch thinking, man, I could do that shit. It's like, well, yeah, you probably could, but can you put up with all this other bullshit too? And that's really kind of where we were coming from. I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's just very mentally straining on you, and it's like you told me when I first started, it's a very thankless job. I mean, and guys may tell you thank you, but, it's just kind of words. Their actions kind of show it more. And, it's all about what you did for somebody, that week. If you're not doing something to just help them out all the time, they kind of quickly forget, it seems like. And it is straining because, sometimes it's guys that you kind of consider friends or guys that you think really respect you or guys that you think may think highly of you, and then, something happens and, you can't help but sometimes take that stuff personally a little bit, So, yeah, it's rough.
It will strain your relationships.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll make it'll just open your eyes and kind of make you see people a little more clearly. My favorite, and I know you watched the show, so maybe you could help me. I wish I would have wrote it down, but the best line I've ever heard to describe it was on Game of Thrones when, Jon Snow, he kept disagreeing with the guy that was over the Night's Watch,
Yes.
Yeah. And if anybody's seen the show, they'll know what I'm talking about. But that guy, finally I guess Jon Snow had a little bit better understanding where he's coming from or whatever he says to him. He says, you know what being a leader is hearing, what did he say? He said, putting up with every twat with an opinion or something like that. I can't remember. I need to go back and find it. it was the thing. I was like, yes, that is what being a booker is. Putting up with every twat that has an opinion. That's exactly the perfect description of the job. I need a T-shirt that says Andrew Alexander, and then on the back, putting up with every twat with an opinion, on sale, $10.
I think you make some bank off of that one.
Yeah, all the kids will have it.
Yeah, no, that probably wouldn't go over well with the family shows, but you might make some money on the internet with it.
Yeah. But it's not always bad. I mean, there's a lot of pride that comes to it when you see when you book something or when you plan something or when you give some guys some specific direction and they actually follow it and you see the result is good and it's positive and the crowd's reacting, like crazy and guys are happy with it and things such as that, it's really rewarding. You can take a lot of pride in it. At least I do. I mean, I like to give very intricate finishes sometimes. I mean, not all the time, but just depending on the case, I think I'm pretty decent at coming up with some unique, not things that haven't never been done in wrestling, but just unique ways to get into things and position a referee some way, or just different things to do stuff that's a little that not everyone can do or not everyone chooses to do, and I do that quite often. So when guys do go out there and do it, and it is a little different, and they nail it, and it does get a good reaction, or everybody's happy with it, like it makes me feel really good because I'm like, that's my idea, that's my doing, that's my direct influence. But then on the other hand, when you give someone a really good finish, and I get excited. I know you can see it on my face when I've got an idea, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Do this. And then when guys go out there and they just botch it, it just pisses me off so bad because I'm like, I gave you this good finish to this match, and you ruined it. Like I could have given that to someone else that wouldn't have just fucked it up for everybody. So it really pisses me off so much. It's like, here's my baby, and you just fucking butcher it. It gets to me. But when it's done right, which a lot of the times it is, it makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And even so, like that definitely, I mean, that's the ultimate really goal of what you're going for there is that guys, A, will do that and get on the same page with you on that emotional roller coaster. They'll invest in what's going on to where they buy into it enough. Because then, of course, that's what sells it to the people. But really what I'm getting at there is even cases where guys take it a step further. That's really what blows my mind and makes me beam with pride even more than somebody that went out there and did everything I told them to, is that somebody that sunk their teeth into something that I gave them and made it their own and it made it even better than I could imagine. I'll give an example of that. When I was booking NWA Anarchy in it was like 2010, and Talent and Money and the New Wave were coming up, and I had this idea, that we were gonna, like, we were in an era where the great tag team rivalries were lost. Like, it was just a bunch of matches thrown together everywhere, it seemed. There was no great feud that would go on and on, like Rock and Rolls versus Midnights or many of the others. But anyway, those guys, they sunk their teeth into that and did more with it than I ever asked or anticipated them to do, and all four of them ended up using it as a launching pad.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember that series. I mean, it was great. And since we're talking about booking, just a story I've told before, and I just kind of like it. I mean, you kind of had to be there, but I remember one night they were doing a match, and they were unhappy. All four of them were unhappy with the finish that the aforementioned Bill Behrens gave them. They were just unhappy with the way the match was laid out and everything like that. And they actually come to me and they kind of said something about it, and I told them. I said, and I'd never said this before or thought it, but it came out. I said, look, you're the guys in the match. Do what you feel is right. But whatever you do has to be better than what you were told to do, because if you're going to go against the direction you were given, it has to be better. It cannot
big
be
roll
worse.
of the dice there. Yeah, you're gambling hardcore, and it can pay off or it can crash and burn.
Oh, yeah, because now looking back, I mean, if I'm booking and I give someone specific direction and they go against it, I'm mad as fuck. I'm really pissed off. I mean, you'll see me rip someone a new asshole. So the fact that I even said that to them shows what an idiot I was. But I do have a point with saying, you better make sure it was better. Well, they go out there, and on this particular, you can look at every match they had, and none of them were stinkers, except this one. And it just flopped. It flopped bigger than shit, and it was their fault, and they knew it was their fault. There was no defense, and they come to the back, and they were just defeated. And I told them, and Bill got on them, and when they were done, they come to the back, and I said, man, I told you it had to be better. You can't go out there and stink it up going against them. And they, they didn't say anything. They knew. They absolutely knew. So it's a good learning experience, but that was just a funny story of going against what the booker tells you to. You better make sure what your idea is going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's an interesting philosophy that wrestling always has to appeal to just the lowest common denominator. And as a booker, I always took that as a challenge, okay, well, you can appeal to those people, and you should, because you got to appeal to the greatest common denominator that's going to be buying your tickets. Sometimes that's the lowest, but it doesn't always have to be. If you look at the successful television shows on TV, like the aforementioned Game of Thrones, or Breaking Bad, or Sons of Anarchy, or any of these magnificent dramas, I think that the proof is in the pudding. I mean, it's a different animal. You're comparing apples to oranges here, but they're similar in terms of spirit in that it's all storytelling. So what's kind of your philosophy with that?
I think, you can't please everybody, for starters. It's never going to happen. Never. I mean, I don't even care how many. If you got 10 people in the group, you're not going to please all 10. Somebody's going to have something to bitch about, which is fine. But you cannot base a show, especially in the Southeast, you cannot base a show 100% geared towards wrestling fans. Like when people bitch about, a WWE show, how it has all these things that are not wrestling fan friendly. You can't have your show like that. Not everyone wants, because for starters, if you have 5 wrestling matches and they're all these straight up wrestling matches, that's going to get repetitive. And I'm a huge fan of technical wrestling and stuff like that. Honestly, it's my favorite thing to watch. But I like to see some stuff mixed in, as long as it's done right and as long as there's a story. I like to see some different stuff. I think there's room on a wrestling show for everything that you come to see these days, with a little comedy and some storytelling and some brawling and fighting, and then some just clean wrestling. I think you have to have all that. You can't gear it towards one specific group. The biggest would be wrestling fans that would just want to see a wrestling show, because especially in this area, but I think any area, you don't always want to see just exchanging holds. Some people want to see just some people fight. Some people start throwing some fists, and some people want to see some blood and some violence, and some people want to see some high flying and little guys jumping around, and all this stuff. So you got to mix it up, and a lot of people are against comedy in wrestling. I'm against bad comedy in wrestling, and comedy that makes your product look stupid or fake, especially that I don't like at all. But, when it's done right, if that's someone's character, I think there's always a spot for that. You just got to do it right. You don't have this comedy guy go out there with your top guy and make him look like a fool and just get away with it, or bad sketches and vignettes that just kind of do nothing for no one on the show. I don't like that, but, I'm a big fan of the comedy that's done right. I mean, if you look back, that stuff's always been done. It's just not done as poorly as it is today. But the storytelling,
funny no money is the old saying. But if done right, funny is good in spurts and on certain spots of the card. And also the thing about comedy, is like, I guess the modern generation of people, because WWE owns everything, they just, I guess, feel like they don't have to abide by the fundamentals of wrestling, and because they still make millions of dollars anyway. So they're like, fuck it, who cares? And if I was them, maybe I would be too. But because you've got comedy all the way from the main event to the bottom of the card there, you see nothing but bad clones of that on the indies now, and that didn't used to be a problem.
Yeah, and what you say about the funny no money is absolutely right. You're not hyping. Come see these guys that are hilarious in our main event. They're on our flyer. Of course not. They're not. They're not the main event. They're not what people's paying to see. But, you know, give them something a little different. Maybe your second or third match has some funny spots in it. People laugh. That's great. I think that's smart. You need that. It breaks up the monotony, and especially when you're running weekly or bi-weekly. But yeah, it's not your big draw, nor should it. It shouldn't be. You know, one example for just because it's happening today was, you know, not long ago they did, you know, the whole thing with Dean Ambrose stole the Money in the Bank briefcase from Seth Rollins, and then he got it back, and Dean Ambrose made mention to him being a freak, and then when it was in the back, you know, they're doing this serious vignette with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Seth Rollins. You know, this is a main event. They main evented the last pay-per-view. It was a serious thing. And all of a sudden, the inside of his briefcase starts vibrating, and they're looking at each other, and he's like, "It's an electric razor." Like, it was like, oh, he's got a vibrator in there. That is funny. I could see. Oh, I was like, okay, that's funny. Except for the fact it's not funny because you're making a fool out of one of your main event guys, and you're slipping it in there for no reason. Do that with, you know, Adam Rose and, you know, Santino. I know he hasn't been on there in a while, but, you know, do that with some of them. That's funny. Yay, that's hilarious. Guy's got a vibrator. Ha ha. But not a main event guy. I just rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, that is not the right spot. And then, like, on SmackDown,
stuff like that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, they did a big backstage vignette they aired on SmackDown with The Rock and Triple H, and I mean, that's just hearing that these days, that's a big deal, and it was really good. It was really entertaining. They were doing some really good stuff, but they just totally went over the line with it being so comical that when it's like they're teasing maybe they'll have a match at WrestleMania, The Rock versus Triple H one more time. That's something to get excited about, but they just totally went so slapstick with it because they're having a good time. They're working together again. I get that. You want to have fun with it. But I thought they went way too far where it's like you can't even, okay, if they have a match, can you even take it serious at this point? Because they just did so much of that. You know, I think you got to save that for certain people and certain times, you know. Obviously, The Rock's clowned on people forever. That's his shtick. But when it's a serious thing like that, I mean, they kind of shed all over the history of The Rock or Triple H. And if you're a wrestling fan and watch that, you know those guys feuded with each other for 4 or 5 years straight. And then you're making a mockery of it like, oh, the history doesn't matter. I just don't like that. I don't like saying what we did back then it's all cool. It was just a show. Like, yeah, you don't have to do that.
Like,
to people.
Within the context of the show, you got to keep it going, and that's not going to change until it shows that they're costing them money, you know, and as long as they're happy with their money, then they're not going to change the way they're doing business. But that's on them because, hey, they're $1 million company, $1 billion company. I can't tell them what to do. I don't have any business telling them what to do. However, on the indies, everything is a bad clone of the WWE in some respects. And so because of this, guys just don't understand why that doesn't work.
Yeah, and look at your least charismatic guy on the WWE roster. He's probably 1,000,000 times more charismatic than just a random indie guy. Like, you know, oh, I can do that. I could do that vignette. I mean, you've seen these film vignettes backstage that air at Empire. We've got this great talent, but we don't have a plethora of guys that have a lot of charisma, which sucks. I wish we did it because it's not something you can really teach. You can teach some things about promos and how to say things, but you can't teach natural charisma. You cannot do it. And stuck where I'm like, say this, you give guys directions, and they say this, you give guys directions, and they can't do it the way you want it to sound and come across, where it sounds natural and it sounds to where it grabs people's attention and they want to hear what you're saying. We have a lot of guys on our roster specifically that can't do it, and I know that every show's like that. There's not a ton of guys out there with that charisma. So when you're doing similar vignettes or promos or things like that, it's not as good. You're trying to make it similar, but it's not anywhere near as good because the guys can't. They don't have the timing. They don't have delivery. They don't have anything like that. So
it's
many
a
guys.
weird thing because you've got the Ring of Honor style, which is so popular with all the other indie guys. And again, great for them because they've got their own thing and they're making money. They're doing good. But again, it goes back to the indie guys want to copy what they see on TV. And so Ring of Honor is that. It's the cool niche thing. They wanted to copy that style everywhere, and that doesn't work down here. And it doesn't work in the context of what we're talking about here. It's like
exactly.
It's just frustrating because you can't seem to get that across to guys.
You can't. And another reason it don't work is because, and I don't know that I can't do it. I never could do it. To be honest, I don't have any interest in doing that style. But I don't know the secret to it. But I know almost every guy I've ever met they can't do it. They cannot physically do that Ring of Honor style, spot after spot after spot, head drops, kicking out, making stuff look like shit and everything. They can't even do it like they do on a Ring of Honor or a PWG or, all these places. I know a few guys that could do that. I know a few guys that work for Ring of Honor. They could pull that off, but how many talents at Empire or in the Chattanooga, Atlanta, Nashville, parts of Alabama, in this huge circle can do that? Very, very few. Look at an Ace Rockwell, a Sean Tempers. Chris Gans is one of my favorite talents at Empire. Look at all the great talents, a Matt Fortune, a Joey Lynch. Those guys are phenomenal athletes. Those guys are phenomenal wrestlers, phenomenal workers. They can't do that. They can't do that Ring of Honor style like the Ring of Honor guys can do. So when you try to do it and you don't come anywhere close to replicating it, you look even worse. Your product looks even worse. You either
and a lot of
blow
guys,
up.
they
Go
focus
ahead.
so much on that, they just don't worry about the charisma part of it. They don't worry about trying to do the promo thing. That's really where I was going with that.
You're right about that too. I'm gonna be the best wrestler. I told Kyle Matthews this before because Kyle Matthews is highly regarded the best wrestler in Georgia, which is great, which is amazing. But I told him, I said, Kyle, you got to be more than the best wrestler. How many places in this country have someone that's the best wrestler in the world? They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere on these big indies. Oh man, that guy's he's a hell of a worker. He's the best wrestler. He's the best wrestler. There's only room for one best wrestler, maybe two or three throughout the country, and you create a dream match. Oh, I want to see these guys go at it. But everywhere has these things. You got to have something that sets you apart. Kyle can pull off a lot of that stuff. That's why he's set apart. He's highly regarded as one of the best. But not everyone can do that. And not even Kyle. He can't do it like a lot of these other people can. He has an advantage when he goes outside of the South, I think, because he can do a little more work. He could go in there and not call any spots and be okay, can call it in the ring, which is what I think sure, you have to memorize a lot of stuff. We all know that, and you have to memorize more now than you've ever had to, but I think what makes you a good worker is being able to call it on the fly and be able to rattle it off the top of your head and be able to get in a bad position to where a spot's blown and you don't just stand there like a deer in headlights like, oh, we messed up. Oh, shit, what do I do? And you just keep going. You keep going because you can't hit pause when you're in the ring. You got to be able to keep going and keep telling the story. That's what it comes down to, is telling the story, which is what you brought up originally with talking about the TV shows. That's the number one most important thing. I don't care how your match is, what moves you do, what high spots you do. If you're telling a story, people will get it. People will get behind it. They'll understand it. It's as simple as that.
Wrestling can be that, I think. I think it you know, you can't get too artsy-fartsy with it, you know, and make it so complex that the layperson doesn't understand it. But, you know, they're also smarter than you give them credit for. And so you really need to work that extra hard to do stuff they haven't seen and suck them in and involve them.
Oh, yeah, that's a mistake I've thought a lot of promoters and bookers that I've worked for over the years, and by a lot of them, I mean almost all of them, 99% of them. I would say you didn't. I'm really trying to think hard just real quickly. I really can't think of a lot that they think that wrestling fans are stupid, or they think wrestling fans they don't keep up with it, like they don't care enough to really get behind something, you know? And that's bull. That's a bunch of shit. Like, we're all wrestling fans. You're telling me that you can ask me something about stuff that I grew up on, and I can tell you, boom, like it happened yesterday. I'm sure you're the same way. A lot of guys we know are the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So why are you going to come to your show for years, aren't going to keep up with stuff that happened that they've seen? I'm not saying they're going to remember every angle or every spot or every match or things like that, but when you do stuff, don't insult the fans by acting like, oh, they're not going to remember this. They don't care. Oh, they don't care about that. If they don't care about it, it's because you've not given them a reason to care about it. I hate that. And, you know, almost everyone to that point, you know, whether it be promoters or bookers, they kind of think that the fans don't care about the product, and they just want to come to the show to have something to do and watch some wrestling. No, they come to the show all the time because they keep up with it. They're invested. They want to see this guy succeed, or they want to see this guy get his ass kicked, or they're into it. Like, I don't understand this mentality of, oh, they don't care, or that's not important enough to them. Yes, they're paying money to see the show. It is important to them. Don't act like it's not. And, you know, most people do. Most people act like that.
Yeah, I think in make or break moments, you got to be honest with them. Right, yeah. No, I understand. But in the make or break moments, you've got to be honest with your fans. Just an example. You know, not trying to suck our own dicks over here. Just use an example of I've got this from other great promoters who I believed in and learned from, and this was just, and I'm not the promoter here, but I was involved in the incident because I was doing the commentary, and it was on that Crazy from the Heat release with Empire, the big summer event. They were going to put it out on DVD. I was going to try to reach out to some folks I knew and try to look into some distribution, and you know, all this stuff was really looking up for it, and of course there was a technical malfunction. They lost some of the footage, and he comes back to me in the midst of the editing process, Drew, the promoter, and he asked for my advice, being someone experienced in the whole deal with PR and you know, having to explain bad situations to fans. And I just said, well, you just got to be honest with them. You just have to let them know what happened. And then as a goodwill gesture, put it up for free on your website that you're launching for video on demand anyway, the one camera mix. And, of course, that was met to a great response, and it turned into a huge publicity deal for Empire. So, you know, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying if you're honest with the people, they'll respect it.
Yeah, I think you can't go wrong. I mean, obviously, and we've had issues with whether it be talent and things like that, and I haven't every time just went out there and said, hey, this guy couldn't come because he's watching a fucking football game, or this guy didn't want to come perform for you because his wife got mad at him and said he couldn't come. Obviously, I don't go out there and say that all the time, but there's times where sometimes you got to either be directly honest, and they appreciate that, or you come up with something a little bit and just try to make the best out of it. And I'm not going into detail because I'm not giving away all the tricks, but my God, I've done this so many times at Empire, it's not even funny, with the smoke and mirrors where we've explained absences and things like that. And every time I'm so worried about it, I think, oh my God, they're not gonna get behind this. They're not gonna buy it. And I'll suck my own dick. I don't care. I can reach it. That's part of my gifts that God's given me. So fuck it. The fans, they buy it. They like stay with it. They don't shit on it. And I think they will. I'm like, man, they're gonna shit all over this. I mean, and I don't even blame them. And then boom, we do it, and they get with it and stick with it, and they don't shit on it. And there's been times where it's been a big high profile thing, and it's like thing happened and we can't deliver on that. Maybe we hyped one match all week, and a guy doesn't want to show up. So we have to make chicken soup out of chicken shit, and we do. And, I think it's, partly because we're a little smart with it, and partly because our fans that are there all the time at Empire are great. And I think they seem to really appreciate the efforts and the steps that our talent and our show as a whole take to give them a good product. I wish that we could break past this kind of glass ceiling that we've hit where we can just get a lot more people out there, because, I mean, you can call it bragging or what, but the Empire product is so much better than being seen by, 100 or 200 people on a weekly basis, with the exception of a big event or something like that where we do some pretty decent numbers for an indie show, which a show that runs all the time, if you're getting 100 people every other week, that is good. I'm not saying that's not good, because it is compared to other shows, but our product on any given week should be seen by as many people as you can cram in the building, because our guys work that hard and they deliver, and we just give a good, tight, quality show that not a lot of other places do. So that gets frustrating, but our fans that are there, they're with it, and I'm glad. I appreciate it. It gives us energy to keep going.
Unfortunately, the state of wrestling is in 100 is kind of considered good. As ludicrous as that sounds, it's actually fucking horrible. But that's indie wrestling. I mean, I don't know of the best product that runs like in the same place either every week or every other week that outside of huge events does more than that, because let's just face it, the economy sucks, and you can come into a new town and really work the shit out of it, and really, it'll stay strong for a while, but, man, people just don't have the money to be coming spending in droves like that over and over and over again. And if you got to be the hottest shit on the planet, and that's not just competing with other wrestling, I mean, that's competing with movies and everything else for their entertainment dollar. So, the business is really on its ass from that perspective, but when you're running these small rural towns, that's about the average that I've seen all over the damn Southeast. I mean, there's some that do a little bit better that have, better populated areas, but in the smaller areas like Rossville, that's about what you get.
It is, and it's a shame, but, and a lot of times when you draw on these big numbers, you're using, names or, some former WWE or WCW talent or things such as that, and that's great that people do that, but a lot of times the promoters that are doing that, they're losing their ass on that too. I mean, sometimes they might do well, but a lot of times, they're still not making money. They're bringing in a high dollar talent, and they're still losing money, even though they're drawing a big house, because they're having to pay this guy so much. And then on the other hand, how many times I just don't know how many times someone in a town that constantly brings in a Buff Bagwell can be excited about going to see Buff Bagwell. That's not a knock on him in any way, shape, or form. It's just a big name that is in your town once a month kind of isn't a huge name after a few months. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've seen them. And
yeah, they really
so
have to dig in and be putting in some creative shit, Like, if they're, embroiled in a bitter feud with the top babyface and everybody's fucking buying into it, then and yeah, that's great, because you've got that guy there on the regular. They're able to teach the guys, that they're working with. They're not just a guy coming in doing their fucking routine dog and pony show that they do in every fucking town and getting their paycheck and getting the fuck out.
Exactly. But I don't really know if I see that on any of these shows. Even when you bring these guys in, I don't know if and I'm not there personally, but just from what I can gather and what I see on the cards and stuff, I don't think anyone's really doing that ever. I know maybe, because the Big Wood, he uses Gunner from TNA a lot. I don't know if he's doing feuds and stuff, but I'm sure he works and helps guys because I know him personally, and I know that he's more than happy to do that. So I'm sure he helps out with some knowledge, but I don't know if I see any promotions in this area using names like you just described, which, I think you're right there. You can get them involved in something and people really, and it gives your talent such a huge rub because, you're doing a real story with a national superstar and people are buying into it. I mean, that's a big deal. And that's a thing, it's been brought up a couple times, but I've taken a lot of pride in that we've never used a quote unquote name at Empire to get, and some of our big shows, for a War Games big show, we drew, right at 500 people in a little small building. Like it was packed, literally standing room only, not just saying it as a figure of speech. We could not fit another seat in there and turning people away, which is so awesome. And, that's done with no names. And then there's shows that have had a dozen names on one show and they didn't outdraw that. So that's kind of a really cool deal when you think about it. And like when NWA Anarchy went to the Georgia Mountain Center for that big, huge event, and, they had War Games and they had a huge ladder match and things such as that, I believe as a whole we outdrew TNA that read the same building that year. Am I right in saying that?
We did just under 1,000. It was like right at 900 with comps and all. Which, I mean, for no TV other than like local public access shit TV that nobody saw any fucking way in the town, it was just off of word of mouth and how hot the product was at the time. Like, it was pretty fucking amazing.
And I really think for that building and that year we outdrew TNA. And, they had, I'm sure Kurt Angle, and I don't know if you would have Sting, but Kurt Angle, Scott Steiner, I mean, who knows who they're but all top talent, got people that anyone would consider a name, and we outdrew them. So I think that's awesome. And, you can produce that stuff with independent wrestling. It's not easy by any means, and you're going to have to work your ass off, but it can be done. Can it be done on a weekly basis? It doesn't appear so, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you pull out. But, like you say, there's a lot of factors that go into that. It's not for lack of trying or lack of work. I know that. But, what are you going to do?
Yeah, right. What the fuck are you going to do? We asked for the 10-minute warning, and we talked through that, but we're at about minute warning now, or so. Or 7-minute warning, rather. So if you wanted to, if there's anything else you wanted to get in.
This time flies by. We kind of talked on some of the positive stuff, but we didn't really touch on working specifically with talent. I mean, how many guys, I've only officially booked Empire Wrestling. How many guys in that locker room, I mean, because you've been there the whole time I've been there. How many guys have grown leaps and bounds from the time that we walked in the door? Almost everyone on the card has gotten so much better. And of course, over the span of 3+ years, you're going to get better naturally. No matter who's working with you, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse and you should quit. But man, we've got so much young talent that has improved so much, and it's not because of me. It's not because I did not train them. I didn't hold their hand 100% of the way, but I had a huge part in helping it. And it really is a good feeling. Even when guys, you feel they don't appreciate it, or you feel that they turn their back on you, and you feel that they don't care and things like that. The fact is, whether they want to admit it or not, or whether they appreciate it or not, you've seen growth in them, and you had a direct hand in it. So, I mean, it feels really good. And every now and then you get some guys that do appreciate it and do let you know that you helped them and things such as that. I mean, pretty much everybody on the roster, like, you know, when you interviewed in the Midnight Black Mass Live, you interviewed Brian Vega, who has just been wrestling just over a year, and it was his first time talking on the mic, at least at our show, and he just did a great job, you know, because you really helped him with the promo, and it was just so good. Like, it sounded like a good wrestling promo, and there were little things, but it's the guy's first real promo, and he did great with it. And I told him, you were standing there, I told him, I said, for every time that that these guys don't appreciate things and they talk shit and they complain and bitch, and it just makes you want to quit. It makes you think, this isn't worth doing it. A guy goes out and does something like you just did and makes it worth it. And that's true. Like, it's not every time. It's not every night. It's few and far between. But sometimes these guys do stuff and you help them do it, and it just makes you feel so good about it. Like, it makes you remember why you love wrestling and why you love helping and why you even put forth the effort. You know, it's probably, I don't know what the number, let's say 35% of the time it's good. And maybe about 65, it's kind of bad. But that 35% is like, it's really special, you know. I've just countless times to think about when you've helped people or when they do something and they just crowd gets so behind them and the crowd's just so into it, and it just, I don't know, it just makes you feel good.
I think that about sums up the wrestling business as a whole. It's about 65% of bullshit, but that 35% of the time when you can get to hit the sweet spot, whether it be as a performer or, you know, in my case as an announcer, in your case as a wrestler, as a booker, as a promoter, whatever your given job is, that you take pride in it, that you can, the little times that it is right, it's the best thing in the world. There's no drug, there's no sex, there's nothing that could top the best moments in wrestling.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we're going to agree, 35% of the wrestling business is A-okay, but you got to fight through 65% of pure nonstop bullshit to get to it.
That's every role.
Yeah, and luckily, and it gets you, because you'll be, I mean, I've been on the brink. I'm like, that's it. I gotta give a notice. I gotta quit. I can't do this anymore. And then, you know, one of these little, Ryan Vega will go out there and he'll do a promo like that and knock it out of the park. Or somebody will, you know, the Wild Stallions and the Hatriots will go out there and just deliver on a tag match, and you're like, man, motherfucker, okay, I'll be back next week. And you come back and you do it all over again, and then you take some more bullshit and you get to your bullying point, and a young up-and-coming guy does something amazing, and you're like, fuck. You can't get out. That's the reason you can't get out. And like you said, no matter what you do, I mean, I do enjoy booking a little more than wrestling, but I mean, it's harder when you're a wrestler. You worry about one match on the card, your match. That's all you ultimately have to focus on. But when you're a booker, you worry about every match on the card, and you're trying to watch as much as you can, and it's rough. It is rough, but hey, 35% of the time, it's worth it.
Well, man, it's been a real pleasure having you on here these past 3 weeks. I think the audience has got to know you, and I hope you to be a recurring guest on the show. I think just anytime we just want to talk about various wrestling topics, you're a go-to guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, just anytime you get a cancellation or somebody no show, because hey, it's going to happen. I'll call up, we'll bullshit about something, or hey, if it's in a few weeks or something, we'll have all new stuff to bitch about.
Outstanding.
Imagine the bitching we could do if we just called out specific people and just ragged on them. Oh my God.
Maybe we won't get to that point, but maybe we will. But we are out of time, folks. Thanks, Andrew Alexander, for joining the show. This is the Midnight Black Mass. Keep one foot in the gutter and one fist in the gold. This is the Reverend, and I am out.